A lot of people treat debt like the villain in every financial story. They've heard about the dangers, so they make it their mission to pay off everything. Their mortgage, car, credit cards, as fast as possible. And from the outside, it looks responsible. It feels like progress. The fewer the payments, the fewer the problems, right? Not necessarily. Here's something that might surprise you. Some of the most financially constrained people I've worked with are debt-free. They don't have a house payment, no car note, not a single revolving balance. And yet, for all intents and purposes, they're stuck. Why? Because their accounts are clean, but they don't have any liquidity or any margin. That's a problem when life hands you an important opportunity. Don't fear debt, fear regret. Hi, I'm Keith Demetriades. Today we're talking about how debt can be a tool for stewardship, why zero balances don't automatically mean you're free, and how the relentless push to pay everything off can cost you a lot more than money. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about debt. So I want to tell you a couple of things you might not be used to hearing. First, debt is not inherently bad. When used correctly, carrying debt can be an act of stewardship. Now, I'm not talking about using debt to fund an unsustainable lifestyle or to even mask financial chaos. I'm talking about something entirely different. Using debt strategically and intentionally sometimes allows you to do more with what you've been given. Let's say you've got a mortgage with a 3% fixed interest rate. That's an incredibly low cost to borrow. You could throw every spare dollar at it, sure. But what if instead you kept those extra dollars working? What could that look like? It might mean investing in assets with long-term growth potential, things like equities, real estate, or your own business. Those types of investments build over time and can support you and others for decades, not just the next few years. It might mean giving more freely while you're still earning, when you have the capacity to support the causes and the people you care about without putting pressure on your own future. It might even mean having extra cash available to help a friend in a tough spot, contribute to a project in your community, or support your adult kids as they start to build their own lives. The point is, debt doesn't have to be the enemy. It really only becomes a problem when it crowds out flexibility or when it's driven by impulse instead of intention. And this is where the concept of stewardship comes in. Being a good steward doesn't just mean paying everything off. We have to ask ourselves, what's the best use of the resources I've been given? What's going to have the greatest long-term impact? How do I generate a return on life? Look, you might find the answer to those questions means reducing debt, but it can also mean maintaining it for a bigger purpose. If you're in a position of strength, steady income, controlled expenses, room to breathe, holding low-cost debt might let you build, give, and live with more intention. And I would argue that's what stewardship is all about. Don't fear debt. Fear regret. Second, being debt-free and financially free are not the same thing. I get that's the dream for a lot of people. Pay down your debt, get rid of all your payments, and gain some margin. There's nothing wrong with that goal. Margin allows you to make choices with your finances rather than being controlled by them. And yes, for people buried under high-interest consumer debt, that first step is critical. Freedom starts by digging out. But for others, especially those in a stronger financial position, chasing zero balances can have unintended consequences. I've seen this firsthand. People pay off their homes early, pour everything into illiquid assets, and drain their reserves to eliminate all debt. And no one really talks about this, but that's not always a good thing. No payments, but also no flexibility. They can't take advantage of a market correction when prices drop, and buying in could really pay off. They can't say yes when a new opportunity comes along, like investing in a business or helping a loved one start something new. They don't have accessible cash if a family situation changes, so they're forced to make hard choices instead of helpful ones. They're tied to a perfect financial picture that doesn't help them live. Being debt-free may feel good emotionally, but it doesn't automatically create the freedom to act. Real financial freedom is about capacity. Can you respond to something meaningful without rearranging your entire life? A mortgage-free house doesn't mean much if you have nothing left over to contribute toward your child's wedding, does it? Don't fear debt, fear regret. The real test of financial freedom is whether you have the ability to respond to the important things in life. So the goal isn't necessarily zero debt. It's to be in a position where your money serves your purpose and where you're free to respond when something truly important comes your way. I want you to really think about this. Some people work so hard to get rid of every payment that they put life on hold. They skip the family vacation because they're focused on the mortgage. They delay generosity because they're working toward that zero balance. They say no to time off, rest, or sabbaticals because the debt hasn't been paid down yet. And the question becomes, at what cost? I've never heard someone say, I wish I had paid off my house 5 years sooner, even if it meant missing time with my kids. But I've heard plenty of people say the opposite. I want to be clear. Debt is not an excuse to be irresponsible. Paying off high-interest debt is a good thing. But if it keeps you from doing the things that make your life count, it's worth stepping back and asking what the real priority is. We're not called to build perfect balance sheets. We're called to use what we've been given wisely, generously, and intentionally. And if a financial strategy, even a well-meaning one, starts to crowd out purpose, relationships, or calling, it might be time to reevaluate it. Don't fear debt, fear regret. Let me give you an example of what using debt intentionally can look like in real life. I have some clients, we'll call Steve and Patty Jones. They've been steadily paying down debt over the years, including a business loan from when Steve had expanded his practice. In a review meeting a couple years ago, we were looking at their financial picture and talking about the path ahead. They had strong cash flow, solid reserves, and just one remaining loan at a low interest rate. Steve's instinct was to knock it out completely. We've got the cash, he said. Let's just pay it off and be done with it. But we slowed down and examined what that would actually accomplish. Ultimately, we decided to hold off. Paying it off would have meant draining most of their liquidity. They'd be debt-free, but they'd have very little room to respond if something meaningful came along. And sure enough, something did. Their daughter was preparing to launch a nonprofit that supported young adults aging out of the foster system. It was a powerful mission, and she needed startup funds to get it off the ground. Because Steve and Patty hadn't rushed to eliminate that last piece of debt, they still had margin. They helped cover her initial operating costs, brought in a few trusted advisors to help her organize, and even connected her with donors in their professional networks. That decision didn't just help their daughter. It gave her organization the foundation to start strong. And now it's fully running and changing lives. Steve and Patty could have been debt-free, but instead, they chose to be purposeful. And that's the difference. They didn't carry debt carelessly. They kept it because it allowed them to build, give, and live in a way that created impact. Don't measure success by whether you've got a zero balance. Measure it by whether you can do the things that matter most. If you've built margin and you're thinking about your next move, make it count. Don't fear debt, fear regret. Because it's not always just about clearing the balance sheet. I'm Keith Demetriades. Thanks for joining me today. And if you found this valuable, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe for more conversations about intentional planning and stewardship. Be a savvy steward. Make your life count.